I think I met Jeb and his wife Kristen probably 7 years ago. And I want to say maybe we met the first time at Young Professionals. I remember comparing which one of us was the oldest person that would show up to Young Professionals. I will say by a couple months I was not the oldest. So anyways, the story for me inviting Jeb today, I told my table, is that we were at a Christmas party, and I get very excited, you know, obviously my happy dollar talking about my wife and my focus on our business. I get very excited about entrepreneurship, and we started speaking about Jeb's project here in business, which he's going to talk about, and I think I must have chewed his ear off for 2.5 hours. We talked half the night with me asking questions about it, and I thought it'd be great to hear about it here. So with that, Jeb Gorham.
First off, thank you for having me, and Mike's a little bit more gray and white than I am, so I'm feeling all right. Fair. I have been to Rotary before. I actually came to Rotary, I think the first year I was at Southern Vermont College. And I'm not here to talk about that today, but I do want folks to know I have Carol Sheringham, our HR director's cards here, and I would love if anyone here has any local job opportunities, please take a card. There are going to be a lot of folks who want to stay local, and I'd love to share that with your group. So I do have cards. If you'd like to take one, please take them. Email her directly with opportunities, and she'll share them with our folks. So the fun part of what I do, right? I'm involved in a lot in the community. I sit on the Village School of North Bennington Board of Directors. So I get to work with my own kids' school, which is a lot of fun. I've worked with Brian McKenna on that board for a long time, who I know all of you know, Don McKenna and all the great folks there. I also sit on the board of directors for BATS, the Bennington Area Trail System. So a lot of great folks there working on the trail systems and trying to integrate everything we do from here to Prospect, and you know, mountain biking, snowshoeing, skiing, trail running, hiking, even getting your dog out on the trails. My role at the college is entrepreneurship and sport, rec, and tourism management, so I get to work on side projects. Right? I tell Mike all the time, I said, at Road Pitch when I was a finalist this past summer, you know, this project is my side hustle, right? We all have side hustles. Mike's getting to move on to his side hustle, which is extremely exciting. That's what I love to hear, because I'm also involved in the steering committee for Startup 802 in town, which the whole goal is to get people to where Mike and Sarah are at now, which is super exciting. So we need to invite you guys to come chat to that group, which would be great. Today I'm going to talk about Paca performance gear. That is the product I'm wearing, is the products you see here in front of you. The concept was born out of a challenge to my students. I challenged my students, I said, come to class with the craziest idea you can. Vicki asked me if I knew Tammy White when I kind of pitched a little bit of this. I got home one Friday afternoon from teaching, and no one was at my house, and that's kind of rare on a Friday afternoon. The kids are usually running around the yard, and it's busy, and there's things going on, and I ended up sitting on my couch waiting for my wife and my kids to come home, and all of a sudden it's like dinner time, and still nobody's home. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, all right, I got to come up with an idea, because I told my students if they come up with ideas, I have to have one. And so I'm racking my brain, I can't come up with anything good. I finally give up, and I opened a beer, and I'm sitting on my couch, and my wife and my kids come bombing in, and all my kids can talk about are alpacas. And they've been at Wing and a Prayer Farm playing with Tammy's alpacas, and at the time, she had a young alpaca. And they're super social animals, and my kids couldn't stop talking about them, and I'm sitting there, and my mind went boom, and I was like, I'm gonna fill jackets with alpaca fiber. Crazy idea, right? I said, that's the craziest idea I can think of right now. I took it to my students on Monday morning. They looked at me and they're like, you're nuts. And I said, yeah, that's what my wife told me too. And I said, that's all right. The next day, I called Tammy and I said, hey, I've got a random idea to run by you. I want to see what you think. And as many of you know Tammy, she's so busy. She said, I don't know if I can find time. And I said, well, what are you doing right now? I'm making pies. And I said, can I stop by your house for 15 minutes? Hour later, after talking to Tammy, I left her house. She had finished making her pies and was putting them in the oven. I learned that the second and third cuts of alpaca fiber are normally composted. Tammy said, people usually throw that away or compost it. She goes, I can't do either with it, so I have bags of it in my basement. And I said, can I take a couple bags of it? And so I left Tammy with like Santa Claus with a couple bags over my shoulders. of second and third cut alpaca fiber. At that point, I still didn't know a lot about it. My students and I started to research it. I started to do a ton of research myself because I was like, hey, this could be viable. I learned that the fibers are hollow, so they're medullated fibers. They actually trap warmth. It's hypoallergenic. It has better wicking capabilities than down and synthetic materials. It's water resistant. All of a sudden, all these things started to come together, and we actually made, with Merity Capella and Evergreen Alterations, we made 2 products. We made 2 jackets. You can look at this first jacket, it's kind of misformed, and I'm like, I hold on to it because one day it's going to go in the glass case on the wall. And it'll be that first product that was made. When I'm on how they built that, right?
Exactly.
That's the goal. And then this was a second product, a pullover, and we took these 2 products on the road. We actually were invited to a ski lift pitch in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Taos Mountain, well, outside Albuquerque. And we went and we pitched this to investors, and the first year we got some interesting feedback. A couple of folks were interested, and we didn't do that well. We didn't make it to the finals. And then the next year we said, well, maybe we'll try to bring it back. We got invited back a second year, which is uncharacteristic for a group like that because they're super innovative. They have a huge incubator out of Albuquerque area. We got invited back, and lo and behold, we finished second overall that year. It was one of those. One of my alumni actually rode the ski lift and pitched the product and pitched the concept to investors. He had to do 8 different runs with 8 different venture capitalists. And then there's 12 teams that get invited. At lunch, they announce 3 teams on the spot, and you've got to pitch on the spot 8 minutes. And my alumni and my current student who were with me that day, they announced us, and they said, the second finalist is, at that point we had a different name, we weren't incorporated yet. And they both looked at me, and one of them shook their head no, and the other one looked deathly panicked, and I was like, come with me, I'll pitch. And so that was actually one of the first times I actually truly pitched the product myself after working with them to build them up to pitch it. We ended up finishing second. It was an amazing experience. There were folks there that were linked to Patagonia and Nike. We got great feedback. They said, you guys really have something. We still think you're crazy. Keep working on it. Since then, we've gone to a bunch of other pitch competitions, both nationally, regionally, locally. Pitched road pitch here last summer, and that was a lot of fun and a great experience. You get to meet a lot of great people doing it as well. I brought a quick timeline just to kind of show what this looks like if folks are interested kind of in that entrepreneurial ecosystem piece. Right, we started with this idea, we prototyped, we got to a point where we said, hey, these jackets don't look like what we want. And Merity and I sat down and we got to the point where we said, hey, we've got a minimal viable product. We can actually make a vest that actually looks pretty good. It fits pretty well. The sizing's great on the performance folks that we're focusing on. We've got a great little alpaca zipper pull that you can take a look at. That's kind of the outside branding. We did all of our research on how you need to label apparel and clothing. We've now moved into internal pockets, which my vest doesn't even have, which is a new concept. And we're now in a stage where we launched a website last year, or late in fall 17. In spring of 18, we actually signed on a distributor who's a West Coast farm store distributor who we work with. My margins aren't great, so it's still kicking me, but it gets our product out there. Right now, there are about just over 200 vests in 27 states plus New Zealand. And that's in just over a year of being incorporated. So we work with that distributor. We just finished up our 5th production run at the end of January. So 200 plus products, only vests at this point. And we're currently working with RPI's Swanson Design School. We have 7 engineering students working with us to potentially speed up production. That's something I know Dana and Mike know about from the Christmas party we chatted at. My wife thinks I'm crazy that I sit at home and stuff vests with alpaca fiber by hand, and so do other people. And so we have a team working on trying to help figure out how do we actually speed production progress for this highly sustainable product. All of the fiber that we've worked with so far has been donated to us. Everything is done locally. When I say locally, Merity's hired 2 additional at-home seamstresses to join production for us. So we're creating jobs, which is awesome, and jobs that people can do on their own time. Which is really amazing. Merity's been great working with us as kind of leading production as a contractor for us. And we use a farm and a fiber mill up in Brandon, Vermont that processes all of our fiber. So when we have fiber donated to us, it comes in, it sits in boxes at my house, which again, my wife hates. My kids think it's wonderful, they play with it all the time. It then gets processed in Brandon, it gets washed, it gets picked, it gets carted, and then it actually gets rolled into about 2.5 to 3 inch bats. And then it comes back and goes back into my house and gets stored. And then it gets actually put into the vest. We still, my team, which at this point is myself and my division chair, students have kind of vacated the property. You know, they've either graduated or become alum and decided, I'm not making any money in this yet, I need a real job. It's unfortunate, they still love the concept. We still, you know, they still bounce ideas off us, we still bounce ideas off them, but this is, at this point, this is a, you know, a 2-person type of company. I'm still up some nights cutting, when we do a production run, I'm up till 1 o'clock in the morning cutting patterns, which I had to learn a lot about. When you go through a patterning process and a muslin process and a this and a that, and Merity and I probably spent hours, and my big monster headache I had at the end of that, but I learned a ton about what goes into actually having to, you know, I'm usually the ideas guy behind the scenes and not the ops guy. And so it became very interesting. We're currently trying to build local sales, regional sales, national sales. So that's kind of the next go here. We have a couple of brand ambassadors out there that we've given products to that are out and about. There are some mountain bikers, some trail runners, some snowshoers. I had to make a prototype for my 11-year-old because he had to have one, so I had to, you know, get a kid's size out. My other 2 children now want them as well, and so I'm like, you gotta be a little bit patient. I can't do everything at once. We're working on jacket concepts, are kind of our next idea. The jacket market, and looking at parkas and jackets is another market potential. Sleeping bags is a market potential. And then other home goods types of products. Looking at the potential of a compressible blanket that's extremely warm. And so there's a bunch of products out there that using a sustainable fill that by thermal testing is actually just as warm or maybe warmer than down in some of the new synthetics on the market, which is pretty amazing. And with the hypoallergenic properties, a lot of folks are attaching to a product like that if they're allergic to down, or they don't like the idea that some of the synthetic products, what they're made with, or some of the processing that goes into them. How am I doing on time, Mike? All right, I talk really fast.
10 minutes before we can ask some questions.
So one of the things that I'd like to talk about with the process and the product and the approach, and that's important to me, is the whole local nature of this. You know, when I think about this local ecosystem and this local economy, there's a huge need for small companies like this. The notion of cottage industry, the notion of building those into larger based organizations that, you know, have a certain mindset towards developing a certain entrepreneurial way, whether it's through intrapreneurship. You know, I'm not going to be an entrepreneur, but I'm going to hire people who think like I do. I'm a huge fan of the notion of intrapreneurship and going out and finding those of us who, it's scary to start a business, right, Mike? There's a lot of risk associated with it, and day in and day out I deal with students who see that risk, and on steering committees in town I see that risk, and it takes a big commitment to quit your day job. That's one of the questions that I always was asked by investors for this project is, when are you going to quit your day job? I'm like, I can't afford to quit my day job yet. I gotta keep going at what I do, and this is my fun project. And so when we start thinking about how to recruit more people like that, that's why I'm here to speak to you folks, is how do we recruit more people to get involved in this local ecosystem too? I think that's a big question. If we're going to revive some of the local economy here, businesses like this could play a huge role in it. Mike and Sarah's business can play a huge role in that. It doesn't need to be a multi-million-dollar business. It needs to be a business that makes money, employs some people, does the right thing, gives back to the community, is involved in a lot of different aspects of it, and has value, right? When I think of how we approach developing this product, we use value proposition and lean development models to develop a business model first. And when you start at the heart of a business model, you're really looking at value proposition. If you don't have a value to your consumer, and you're not helping them with either a need, a want, or a challenge, or a problem that they have, you're kind of lost at sea from that standpoint. You might have the most brilliant idea ever, and yet if there's not value to that end user, that product's never going to go anywhere. And I've seen that happen with some big companies. I've seen that happen with some small companies in my time. And we feel that this product has a lot of value because it meets a lot of need for some folks that really are focused on the sustainability aspect of it. The notion that we can help change a local ecosystem. There's a lot to be said when we talk to folks nationally about this, that they're shocked that you haven't outsourced this to China yet. You can make it that much faster. You can do this. You can do that. Your margins are gonna be better. And I'm like, it doesn't hurt me to cut patterns at my house. It doesn't hurt me to. I feel really good that there's two seamstresses that can work out of their house, and one of them simply baffles, and the other one is the finisher. And Merity's my step in between to make sure everything gets done. To me, that's extremely meaningful when we start to think about being able to launch a business like this in a community like Bennington. So as I keep talking and talking and talking, I do want to open it up to questions, because I know there were a lot of questions around the table earlier, and I think I'd rather answer questions than just kind of keep talking. Yes.
Have you been involved with the Eastern Outdoor Gear shows at all?
We have not yet.
Have
The only shows that we've been involved with so far have been our distributor, who's done a couple of the Paca shows. And again, it's just a resources thing. It's more a human resources thing at this point, in terms of we just haven't had the time to get out and send a team out. We've thought about it.
There's usually four a year on the East, and they're phenomenal.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we were going to go to the Made in Vermont marketplace and then pulled the plug at the last minute when we got too busy. So.
Alpacas are not as common as cows. Are you going to have enough material if you're successful?
You know what? I just had a woman, we sold 10 vests to a woman in Cheyenne, Wyoming, who immediately emailed me back after getting her vests and telling us that she loved them, that she had 1,000 pounds of fiber sitting in her barn that she couldn't help but keep because she didn't know what else to do with. We have, there's networks of fiber collection. One of the reasons I signed on my West Coast distributor is he's also a fiber collector. So what he does is he allows people to donate fiber to his fiber call program, and in turn he gives them credit at his wholesale shop. And so I have that network. There's actually a Massachusetts, New England network that collects fiber as well. Right now we're getting all of the fiber donated. I mean, the model could shift slightly. We might have to, in the future, if someone really realizes that we really need that fiber, I may have to pay a bit for it, but it is low cost fiber, even if I did have to purchase some. Part of my initial deal with my distributor was 400 pounds of free fiber shipped to my house, which came in, 16 by 16 inch boxes, and 9 of them piled in my driveway when I got home one afternoon. We've done 200 products with that fiber. I still have 4 boxes of unused fiber that hasn't even been processed yet, and I still have a storeroom in my basement full of batting. So we're doing well on fiber right now, but that's a great question. Yes?
Where are your products available? How does somebody...
Right now, our website's our best way to get the products. I've talked to Nature's Closet down in Williamstown. Steve and Beth down there are interested in having the product in the shop there. We've got a list of local and regional retail shops that we'd love to be in. Again, it's a time, energy, and effort human resources thing right now that is going to get shifted pretty soon, actually. But the web is the easiest place, and I actually have a special for folks if you're interested. So I have cards here as well. We just sponsored the Vermont Outdoor Women's Doe Camp this past February, and we were able to put out an offer to them, and I've offered you guys kind of the same offer here today. So.
I mentioned that maybe we need some Rotary logo wear or something, right?
For when we're ringing the bell.
When we're ringing the bell, I bet they'd be really warm and nice.
Maybe some booties.
Yes, that's what we need, right?
Sure, Dan.
Yeah, two things. Bennington obviously has a big history with textile manufacturing, whether it's
Yep.
the old mills or something more recent like CB Sports. So I'm wondering, are you still seeing that capability still lingering?
I mean, Merity worked for CB Sports at one point in time, and she and I have had a lot of conversations about that. Some of the work we're doing with RPI right now, and I can't say a lot about it because we have an NDA with them and they have an NDA with us in terms of what they're working on for us. But there's potential to open up a space here locally if that project pans out, and it would speed production immensely.
One other quick thing, you might look at pet uses of alpaca fiber, because I had a small bag of alpaca fiber and I opened it up and let my cat sniff it.
I actually have some to pass around. This is the file.
Crack
Go
look
each
on
side
it.
of the room
She
here.
loved it.
You can open it, open it right up, and this is the fiber after it's processed. So this is what the batting feels like.
Well, yeah, and it.
Oh, my cat's always jumping in bags of this stuff. I've got to like make sure they're like locked tight, or else there's fiber all
So there's
over.
something about it. that
There's
cats
something
love.
for the
It
pet
started
industry,
chasing me
maybe.
around the room, so.
Maybe that's a bigger industry than a people industry.
I thought you were going after the coats for dogs. I've had people ask me that
Oh,
question. Will you make a coat for my dog? I was like, sure, we'll make a coat for your dog. Yes.
Cat.
When John Goodrich at one time ran a business that supplied police department and that whole industry, did you ever contemplate making a bulletproof?
Haven't thought about bulletproof, but with the warmth values of this, actually Merity has some government contracts that she works on, and she's actually, when we get to a point where we've sped production, she's offered to make some of those contacts for us. Yeah.
I'm just interested, I mean, you made a reference to the fact that, I mean, there is a lot of competition from, being made in China. What's the pathway into a market for something like this when you are competing versus?
Yep.
Such low
It's
cost?
difficult, right? I mean, even my distributor I signed on, he wanted us immediately to begin production in China because he thought he could sell so many of these. And one of the reasons we haven't sold so many of them is the speed of production. Right now, I try to fill production runs of between 30 to 40 products at a time, which is manageable. But right now we have to color batch them. So if it's a gray outer, green inner, all gray outer, green inners get sewn at the same time in a batch. Because for the seamstresses to change out their threads and their bobbins and all of the things that they need to do, it's not time efficient. So things get color batched. So right now, if I bring in an order of about 40 products for a production run right now we're looking at about a 6-week turnaround. Which my distributor said, you send this to China, you'll have it in a week. And I was like, maybe less. And you're gonna save X number of dollars on every piece. I mean, right now, I mean, I'm honest in terms of what it costs us right now. We're not even able to buy fabric wholesale right now. I mean, we're not buying 500 yards of fabric per color at a time. So in terms of what the costs are to produce a product right now, a single vest from all input and labor costs us about $48 to finish. And so when you consider that, and then sometimes I'll throw out my retail price and people cringe, at $229 retail for a vest, some people are like immediately turned off by the price point. But I've also had investors tell me your product is a luxury product, why isn't it $359? And so it kind of brings me to I'm sure some of you have heard the story of Peloton bikes, the new indoor cycling revolution. Peloton launched their first bike at $1,200 a bike, and no one bought their bikes because they thought they were pieces of trash. They immediately went back into the boardroom and they said, let's sell them for $2,000 or $2,500 a piece. Didn't change a thing on the bikes, and now they're over $1 billion company. So it's stories like that make you really think about what your marketplace is and what the demand looks like. A lot of folks will cringe at a $229 vest because you can buy the North Face vest at $159 or $139 depending on which model you go after. At this point we've compared ourselves to the Montclair, the Montbells, the Canada Gooses of the market, more of your higher end luxury type of items that are, to be honest with you, we've product tested thermal images against some products like that, and our vests are warmer. And so when we have that type of research on the back end of this, we just need to really mobilize some of our efforts and try to push that forward.
Do you find that your consumers are being patient? I know that when a business is starting, if you get too many orders and you're trying to catch up.
Definitely. That's been an interesting conversation with my distributor. My distributor is very impatient and will tell me people are having an issue with it, but when we've reached out and explained how we work and what we do, and I personally answer those emails, people are fine with it. I haven't had anyone come back to me after I've fully explained that things are color batched and this is how it's made. I haven't had anybody come back and say that's a problem.
And so once you have your system with RPI worked out, production can
speed very, very, very quickly.
Are you close?
They'll be done with the project at the end of the semester, and they'll have created a prototype product for us that will help us speed production. And then it's up to us to figure out, how that prototype product goes into full production. And at that point, I'll be honest, I've offered to them that they can keep the patent on it. Because we're unable to pay them. They usually have GE and other companies come into their design lab and write them a check for $25,000 on the spot to do a project. I'm lucky I have a contact there that said, you know what, I love your project, come talk to my boss and see what we can do. And we said, you know what, if something comes out of this that's a design patent that helps us, we're welcomed in. We've discussed royalties and we've discussed things like that as a way to pay them back for being able to help us.
That's great. Really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.